Over the past 4.5 decades, Stephen King, America's reigning master of horror, has written 60 novels, 5 nonfiction books, over 200 short stories, a smattering of screenplays, a handful of comic books, enough essays to fill a collection, and an episode of The X-Files. What have you been doing with your time? Even if you're a diehard Stephen King fan, this can all be a bit hard to keep up with. The dude's a machine, churning out best-selling material at a rate that can't even be matched by people half his age. He's a goddamn boss. But here's something you might not know, and here I'm specifically speaking to the casual Stephen King fans, not those of you who clear the board every time there's a Stephen King round at bar trivia. I know you folks know what's up. This one's for your neighbors. So let me start over. But here's something you might not know. A great deal of Stephen King's writing is connected. Via the central linchpin of the author's Dark Tower series, the bibliography of Stephen King is largely comprised of something that might reasonably be called the Stephen King Multiverse. Here's how it works. Characters, settings, and objects from various King novels pop up inside other, seemingly unrelated King novels all the time. By charting the appearance of these recurring characters, locations, and doodads, you can actually sort of chart the known Stephen King universe. And here you thought Marvel invented this sort of thing. As I mentioned before, a lot of this is tied into Stephen King's Dark Tower mythology. That series, comprised of 7 books that run over 4,200 pages, revolves around an alternate dimension gunslinger's epic quest to protect a gigantic, black tower that serves as the linchpin for all of existence. The Dark Tower series has ties to countless other King works, in ways both big and small. Let's start big, with Randall Flagg. Flagg is the Dark Tower's big bad, and the arch-villain of its gunslinger hero, Roland, but he also headlines another post-apocalyptic epic, The Stand. Then there's Father Callahan, who we first meet battling a number of very ill-tempered vampires in 1977's Salem's Lot. Callahan pops up again in a completely different world, in 2003's The Dark Tower Wolves of the Kala, where he helps our hero do battle against... well, it's kind of hard to explain, but they're robot werewolves who dress like Dr. Doom. I know that sounds weird, but I promise you it makes sense in context. All this stuff ties back to the Dark Tower, but that isn't to say those are the only kinds of connections between King novels. Take the town of Castle Rock. There's all kinds of stuff happening in Castle Rock. The town first appears in 1979's The Dead Zone, and King's been setting stories there ever since. The Body, which some of you may know as Stand By Me, Needful Things, The Dark Half, and The Shawshank Redemption, just to name a few. Castle Rock is definitely King's most well-known fictional city, and the one he's returned to most frequently over the years. But coming in at a close second is Derry, Maine, better known as the haunted home of one Pennywise the Clown. As presented in 1986's It, Derry is basically a town built on top of a giant, festering reserve of hatred, violence, and fear. It's all being controlled by Pennywise the Clown, arguably the most iconic villain King ever invented. Pennywise uses Derry as his own private hunting ground for generations, feeding at his leisure and terrifying the townsfolk like he was getting paid to do it. I mean, admittedly, the dude is very good at what he does. Here's another thing you non-superfans might not know. Stephen King is also a character in the Stephen King multiverse. In the back half of the Dark Tower series, King introduces himself in a younger, possibly exaggerated form, as a character Roland and his questmates need to protect on their way to that big, black, mysterious tower. He even went the extra mile, tying the whole thing into the 1999 car accident that very nearly claimed his life. In our world, Stephen King, the author, was saved by surgeons, medicine, and no small amount of blind luck. In the Dark Tower, Stephen King is saved by... well, you'll have to read the books to find out. And read the books you should. Lifelong Stephen King fans know we're only scratching the surface of the Stephen King multiverse here. The man's entire bibliography is jam-packed with unexpected connections and surprise cameos, and stumbling upon those connections as you read through King's novels is almost as much fun as being scared witless by them. These connections act as Easter eggs for fans and make the whole thing feel very much of a piece with itself. Stephen King didn't just write a bunch of books, he created a whole world, many of them in fact, and for that we are truly thankful. Long days and pleasant nights, Cy King.